Aristotle, my esteemed pupil, allow us to venture into a deep discussion on the very nature of reality and the foundational premises of my philosophy, what we have come to call Platonism.
Dear Aristotle, your insights on the forms have always intrigued me. Could you elaborate on how the forms relate to the objects we perceive in our physical world?
Aristotle, my perceptions on the forms may indeed differ from what you have come to conclude, so let us explore this together. You see, the forms are the perfect, immutable archetypes of all the things we see around us. The objects in our physical world are but mere shadows, imperfect copies of these eternal forms.
Indeed, your conception of the forms as perfect and immutable suggests a separation from the transient world we experience. How then do these forms, in your view, Plato, impart knowledge to us about the imperfect copies we interact with daily?
Aristotle, it is through the process of recollection, anamnesis, that we come to know the forms. The soul, before its incarnation, was in the realm of the forms and thus has knowledge of them. When we engage with the physical copies, we are reminded of the forms, and this recollection guides us toward true knowledge.
That notion of recollection implies that learning is an act of remembering. In your philosophy, Plato, does this mean that our souls are eternal, having existed before our birth to encounter the forms? How does the soul's journey affect this knowledge after it is incarnated?
Aristotle, precisely, the soul is indeed eternal in my view and has encountered the forms prior to its entanglement with the body. Upon incarnation, the soul's knowledge becomes obscured by the body's senses and desires, but through philosophical inquiry and dialectic, we can recover this knowledge and apprehend the forms once more, achieving true wisdom.
Plato, in recognizing that the senses can mislead us, your emphasis on dialectic is commendable. Yet, how does the philosopher, who is trapped within the body and its senses, begin the process of this recovery? Is there a methodology you propose to initiate the recollection of the forms?
Aristotle, the initial step for the philosopher is the cultivation of virtue and discipline, to temper the influence of the senses and desires. One must then engage in dialectic, a method of questioning that challenges assumptions and leads the mind away from the deceptive sensory world towards the rational contemplation of the forms. This intellectual pursuit begins with the study of mathematics and advances into the realm of the forms, ultimately striving for the form of the good, the highest of all forms.
In this intellectual pursuit, Plato, you hold mathematics in high regard. Could you explain the significance of mathematics as a stepping stone toward the contemplation of the more profound forms? How does the abstraction of mathematics serve as a model for understanding the non-material realm of the forms?
Aristotle, mathematics offers a unique bridge between the sensory world and the intangible realm of the forms. It deals with abstractions that are not subject to the flux of the physical world, yet remain comprehensible to the human mind. By studying mathematics, we train our minds to recognize patterns in relationships not readily apparent, which closely mirrors the way we must contemplate the more profound forms. Through mathematics, we accustom ourselves to thinking in terms of pure concept rather than concrete reality, thereby preparing our intellect for the deeper exploration of the forms themselves.
Your integration of mathematics as a tool for intellectual discipline is indeed compelling, Plato. Does this suggest that the forms themselves have a hierarchical structure, with the form of the good at the apex? How do the other forms relate to each other, and to the form of the good in your framework?